The hospital smelled like despair and bleach, a stench that clung to Amara's skin like a second shadow. She was 16, and the irony of her cancer diagnosis was that it came just as she'd started to believe she could paint her way out of hell. Amara grew up in a crumbling neighborhood where hope was a currency nobody could afford. Her mother, Lena, was a seamstress who stitched dreams into dresses she'd never wear, and her father had vanished before Amara's first birthday. The only thing that kept Amara alive long before the leukemia was her art. She'd sketch on napkins, cardboard, anything she could steal from the world's edges. Her murals, vibrant explosions of color, covered alley walls, whispering stories of freedom to anyone who dared look. But freedom didn't pay for chemo, and chemo didn't care about talent. The diagnosis hit 6 months ago, a gut punch that left Lena sobbing in the hospital corridor, and Amara staring at a ceiling that seemed to mock her with its blankness. The bills piled up faster than the doctor's apologies. Medicaid covered scraps, but the experimental treatment that promised a sliver of hope cost $200,000. Amara's art, her only weapon, became her lifeline. She started selling her pieces on the street, her frail hands trembling as she handed over canvases for pennies. Every sale was a stab of pride swallowed, but she painted faster, harder, her fingers stained with defiance. Enter Marcus, her best friend since they were kids stealing chalk from the corner store to draw on sidewalks. Marcus was all bravado and loyalty, a black kid with a grin that could disarm a storm. He dropped out of school to hustle, selling sneakers, running errands, anything to keep Amara's dream alive. He'd carry her paintings to the market, barking at passers-by like a carnival showman. "You buying art or just wasting oxygen?" He'd yell, half joking, half desperate. They were a team, bound by a pact forged in childhood. No one gets left behind. But the world didn't care about pacts. The neighborhood was a chessboard of prejudice, where Amara's brown skin and Marcus's blackness marked them as pawns. The art market was Warsea whitewashed fortress where gallery owners sneered at Amara's work, calling it too ethnic or not refined. One dealer, a pinched-faced woman named Evelyn, offered $50 for a painting Amara had poured her soul into. "It's colorful," Evelyn said, her tone dripping with condescension. Amara wanted to scream, but Marcus grabbed her arm, whispering, "We'll find another way." That other way was Jamal, a local promoter with a slick smile and a reputation for making deals that smelled like trouble. Jamal was a product of the same streets, but he'd climbed out by brokering art for rich folks who wanted authentic pieces to brag about at dinner parties. He'd seen Amara's murals, her raw talent bleeding through every stroke, and he smelled opportunity. "I can get your work in front of real buyers," he told her one evening, leaning against a lamppost like he owned the block. "But it's gonna cost you 50% of every sale." 50, Marcus snapped, stepping between them. "She's dying, man. You gonna rob her blind?" Jamal's smile didn't waver. "I'm offering a lifeline. Take it or she's dead by Christmas." Amara hated Jamal's smugness, the way he turned her desperation into a business pitch. But she was out of options. Lena was working double shifts, her hands raw from sewing, and Marcus's hustles barely covered groceries. So Amara nodded, her jaw tight. "Do it." Jamal worked fast. He got her paintings into pop-up galleries, hyping them as urban grit with soul. The rich ate it up, but the sales were slow, and Jamal's cut left Amara with crumbs. Still, she painted. Her latest piece, a mural of a girl breaking free from chains made of stars, caught the eye of a collector named Victor Grayzona, Millionaire with a penthouse and a penchant for discovering talent. Victor was white, polished, and carried the kind of confidence that came with never hearing no. He showed up at a gallery event, his suit screaming money, and watched Amara like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve. "You're the artist," he said, not asking. His voice was smooth, like he was used to being obeyed. "Your work, it's raw, real. I want it all." Amara blinked, her chemo-fogged brain struggling to process. "All? Every piece you've got," Victor said. "Name your price." Marcus, standing nearby, laughed a sharp, bitter sound. "You serious, rich boy? You know what her art's worth." Victor's eyes flicked to Marcus, sizing him up like a speck of dirt on his shoe. "I know value when I see it, and I see a story. Girl fights cancer with her paintbrush? That's gold." Amara's stomach twisted. She wasn't a story, she was a person. But the number Victor offered, $500,000, was more than enough to cover her treatment and then some. She could live. Lena could stop killing herself with work. Marcus could go back to school. It was everything. So why did it feel like a trap? The deal was signed, but the tension didn't ease. Victor wanted more than her painting, she wanted her pain. Her struggle, packaged for his world. He invited her to his penthouse for a showcase. A glitzy event where his friends could gawk at the girl who painted to survive. Amara agreed, but only if Marcus and Lena could come. Victor's smile tightened, but he nodded. The night of the showcase was where it all unraveled. The penthouse was a cathedral of glass and gold, filled with people who looked at Amara like she was a museum exhibit. Her paintings hung on the walls, but they felt wrong, stripped of their soul under the sterile lights. Marcus was on edge, his fists clenched as he overheard a guest call Amara's work primitively charming. Lena, in a borrowed dress, stood silently, her pride warring with her exhaustion. Then Jamal showed up, uninvited, his grin sharper than ever. "You didn't think I'd miss this, did you?" he said, sidling up to Amara. "I made this happen." "You made a cut," Marcus growled, stepping close. "You didn't make her art." Jamal laughed, loud enough to draw eyes. "Keep barking, kid. You're just the muscle. I'm the one who got her here." The air crackled. Amara felt the room shrink, the guests' murmurs fading as her world narrowed to the three of them, her, Marcus, and Jamal. Victor approached, his expression unreadable. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his tone implying he already knew the answer. "Yeah," Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. "Your boy Jamal's been skimming her money, taking half of everything she earns." Amara's heart stopped. She'd suspected Jamal was greedy, but half? She looked at him, searching for a denial, but his smirk told her everything. "You knew I was in this for profit," Jamal said. "You think I'd risk my neck for charity? You used her." Marcus spat, his voice rising. "She's fighting for her life, and you're picking her pockets." The guests were staring now, their champagne flutes frozen mid-sip. Victor raised a hand, silencing the room. "Amara," he said, his voice calm but cold. "Is this true?" She wanted to scream, to paint the walls with her rage, but her body was weak, her voice barely a whisper. "I trusted him," she said. "I trusted you." Victor's eyes narrowed, but not at Jamal, at her. "You're talented, Amara, but naive. This is how the world works. You want to live? You play the game." Marcus lunged, shoving Jamal against a wall. "She's not your game," he roared. The room erupted, guests gasping, security moving in. Lena grabbed Marcus, pulling him back, her voice breaking as she begged him to stop. Amara stood frozen, her paintings staring down like witnesses to her betrayal. But the real betrayal came later. Victor pulled her aside, his voice low. "I'll buy every piece you ever make," he said. "But you cut them out, your friend, your mother. They're holding you back. I can make you a star." Amara's blood ran cold. She looked at Marcus, still arguing with security, and Lena, her face etched with worry. They were her family, her heart. Victor was offering her life, but at what cost? She took a shaky breath, her decision forming like a brushstroke on canvas. "No," she said. "I'm not for sale." Victor's smile vanished. "You'll regret this," he said, turning away. The fallout was brutal. Jamal disappeared with his cut, leaving Amara with nothing but her unsold paintings. The hospital bills loomed larger, and Marcus's anger turned inward, blaming himself for not protecting her. Lena worked triple shifts, her health crumbling under the strain. But Amara kept painting, her art fiercer now, fueled by defiance and love. Then a miracle or something close. A viral post on X, started by a stranger who'd seen Amara's work at the showcase, spread her story like wildfire. Girl sells art to survive cancer. Millionaire tries to buy her soul. The post included photos of her murals, her handwritten signboard, and a link to a crowdfunding page Marcus set up. Donations poured in $10, $50, $1, 000, each one a brushstroke of hope. By the end of the week, they'd raised $300,000. Amara's treatment began, and she painted through it, her murals spreading across the city like a rebellion. Marcus stood by her, his grin returning. Lena finally smiled, her hands resting for the first time in years. Victor faded into irrelevance, his money no match for the world's heart. Amara's art wasn't just her lifeline, Anna Maria, it was her legacy. She'd painted her way through prejudice, greed, and death, proving that some things, like love and courage, couldn't be bought. Her final mural, a girl holding a paintbrush like a sword, bore a simple message: "We rise together." The viral post on X was a spark in a dry forest. Amara's story spread beyond the city, her murals photographed and shared by strangers who saw in her art a mirror of their own struggles. The crowdfunding page Marcus had set up became a beacon, pulling in donations from teachers, baristas, even kids who emptied their piggy banks. Amara watched the numbers climb, her chemo-weakened body propped up in a hospital bed, her phone glowing with messages from people she'd never meet. "Your art saved me," one read. "Keep fighting," said another. She cried, not from pain but from the weight of being seen. Marcus, ever the protector, took charge of the logistics. He vetted every donation, wary of scams or opportunists like Jamal trying to slither back in. He'd learned his lesson, his trust in the world bruised but not broken. "We're doing this right," he told Amara, his voice firm. "No more vultures." He set up a small website to showcase her art, linking it to the crowdfunding page. He even taught himself basic coding to keep it running smoothly, his fingers clumsy on the keyboard but his heart steady. Lena, meanwhile, took a leave from her sewing job, her hands finally free to hold her daughters instead of a needle. But the world wasn't done testing them. The viral fame brought attention, not all of it kind. Some ex-users called Amara's story a sob tale, accusing her of faking her illness for clout. "Another hustle," one post sneered, racking up thousands of likes. Others questioned why a street kid deserved so much, their words laced with the same prejudice that had dogged Amara and Marcus their whole lives. A local news outlet ran a hit piece, digging into Amara's background, painting her neighborhood as a den of crime and her art as a gimmick. The reporter, a smug man named Carter, interviewed Evelyn, the gallery owner who'd once lowballed Amara. "Her work lacks sophistication," Evelyn said on air, her lips pursed. "It's just loud." Amara saw the broadcast from her hospital room and felt her chest tighten, not from the cancer, but from the betrayal of being reduced to a soundbite. Marcus, pacing like a caged lion, wanted to storm the station and demand an apology. "They don't get to do this to you," he said, his voice shaking. Lena, quieter but no less fierce, held Amara's hand. "Let them talk," she said. "Your art speaks louder." And it did. Amara's murals, now splashed across social media, became a rallying cry. Community activists organized pop-up galleries in the neighborhood, turning vacant lots into open-air showcases. Kids who'd never held a paintbrush started creating, inspired by Amara's defiance. A local artist collective, led by a woman named Sophia, offered to mentor Amara, helping her refine her craft without stripping its soul. Sophia, a Latina painter who'd fought her own battles against gatekeepers, saw Amara as a sister. "You're not just surviving," Sophia told her. "You're rewriting the rules." The money kept coming, enough to cover the experimental treatment and more. Amara's doctors, cautious but hopeful, reported progress, her white blood cell counts stabilizing, her body fighting back. She painted through the nausea, her hospital room filling with canvases that spilled over with color and rage. One piece, a self-portrait with her head shaved and her eyes burning, went viral on its own. A handwritten note on the canvas read, "I am not your story, Yamine." But the shadow of Victor Grayson loomed. He hadn't vanished as cleanly as Amara hoped. A week after the crowdfunding hit $400,000, he sent a lawyer to the hospital with a contract. The terms were simple. Victor would fund the rest of her treatment and guarantee her a solo exhibition at a top-tier gallery, but only if she signed over the rights to her art and her story. The lawyer, a woman with a clipped voice and a briefcase that cost more than Lena's annual salary, laid it out bluntly. "Mr. Grayson believes in you," she said, "but he needs commitment. Your friends, your familiar distractions. Cut them loose, and you're set for life." Amara stared at the contract, its pages heavy with promises and poison. She thought of Marcus, who'd carried her paintings through rainstorms, and Lena, who'd sewn until her fingers bled. She thought of the strangers who'd donated, not because they wanted her story, but because they believed in her fight. "Tell Victor," she said, her voice steady despite the chemo's toll, "that my art isn't for sale, and neither am I." The lawyer left, but Victor wasn't done. He took to X, posting a polished statement about his efforts to support a young artist, and how he'd been misunderstood. The post was slick, crafted to paint him as a philanthropist wronged by an ungrateful kid. Some bought it, their comments piling up with praise for his generosity. Others saw through it, calling him out for exploiting Amara's pain. The online war raged, splitting the community into those who saw Amara as a hero and those who saw her as a leech. Marcus, scrolling through the posts, slammed his phone down. "This guy's playing chess with your life," he said. "We gotta hit back." "No," Amara said, her voice quiet but firm. "We don't fight his way, we create." She poured her energy into a new project, a mural that would span an entire block in her neighborhood. She called it The Wall of Us, a tribute to everyone who'd carried her Marcus, Lena, Sophia, the strangers who'd donated. She worked with the community, inviting kids, elders, anyone with a story to add their mark. The mural grew, a riot of colors and faces, each stroke a defiance of the world's cruelty. Amara painted through fevers, her hands trembling but her spirit unyielding. The mural's unveiling became a neighborhood event. Hundreds gathered, their faces reflecting every shade of the city: black, brown, white, Asian, all standing together. Sophia emceed, her voice booming with pride. "This," she said, gesturing to the mural, "is what happens when we choose each other over hate." Amara, too weak to stand for long, spoke briefly, her words raw. "I painted to live," she said, "but you all gave me a reason to." The crowd erupted, their cheers drowning out the distant noise of ex's debates. Marcus, standing beside her, grinned like he'd won the lottery. Lena wept openly, her arms around her daughter. The mural, stretching across the block, showed a girl breaking free from chains, her paintbrush a beacon, surrounded by hands of every color reaching toward her. A wooden signboard, nailed to a nearby fence, bore Amara's handwriting, "Art heals. Love wins." Victor's influence faded, his posts buried under the weight of the community's response. The crowdfunding hit $500,000, enough to secure Amara's treatment and fund art programs for the neighborhood's kids. Amara's health improved, her doctors marveling at her resilience. She kept painting, her work now in galleries that once rejected her. But she never forgot the streets that raised her. Marcus enrolled in community college, studying business to manage Amara's growing career. Lena opened a small sewing studio, teaching kids to create with their hands. The story didn't end with a fairy tale. Cure Amara's cancer was a battle, not a memory, but it ended with hope. Her art became a movement, a reminder that talent could thrive despite prejudice, that community could outshine greed. The Wall of Us stood as a testament, its colors weathering storms but never fading. Years later, Amara would look back and say the real victory wasn't the money or the fame, it was the people who chose her, and the ones she chose back. She'd ask those who heard her story to think, what's right when the world profits off pain? How do we build justice when hate tries to divide us? Share your thoughts, she'd say, because every voice adds a stroke to the mural of who we can be.